Gentlemen,
今天我们齐聚巴黎，
today we are gathering
出席
here
联合
in
国
Paris for the opening ceremony of the United Nations Conference on Climate Change. Our presence shows that terrorism cannot hold back mankind's efforts to address climate change and pursue a better future. Let me take this opportunity to express my sincere sympathy to the French people and my gratitude to President Hollande and the French government for their meticulous preparations for this conference. This Paris conference is convened to strengthen the implementation of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and bring about a comprehensive, balanced, ambitious, and binding agreement on climate change. The French writer Victor Hugo once observed that extreme resources spring from extreme resolutions. I believe that with all parties making joint efforts with sincerity and confidence, the Paris conference will yield satisfying results. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the Paris Agreement should focus on strengthening post-2020 global actions on climate change and boost global efforts to pursue sustainable development. The Paris Agreement should help meet the goals of the UNFCCC and chart the course for green development. The agreement should follow the principles and rules set out in the UNFCCC and contribute to its full and effective implementation. The agreement should put effective control on the increase of atmospheric concentration of greenhouse gases and encourage countries to pursue green, circular, and low-carbon development. The Paris Agreement should help galvanize global efforts and encourage broad participation. The agreement should provide institutional arrangements that propel countries to make concerted efforts. Besides governments, it should also mobilize businesses, non-governmental organizations, and all players in society to participate in international cooperation on climate change, thus raising public awareness of climate change. The Paris Agreement should help increase input of resources to ensure actions on climate change. Developed countries should honor their commitment of mobilizing $100 billion each year before 2020 and provide stronger financial support to developing countries afterwards. It is also important that climate-friendly technologies should be transferred to developing countries. The Paris Agreement should accommodate the national conditions of various countries and lay emphasis on practical results. It is imperative to respect differences among countries, especially developing countries, in domestic policies, capacity building, and economic structure. Addressing climate change should not deny the legitimate needs of developing countries to reduce poverty and improve their people's living standards. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the Paris conference is not the finishing line, but a new starting point. As an important part of global governance, the global efforts on climate change can be taken as a mirror for us to reflect on what models to have for future global governance and how to build a community of shared future for mankind. Much valuable inspiration may thus be drawn. We should create a future of win-win cooperation with each country making contribution to the best of its ability. The Paris conference should reject the narrow-minded mentality of zero-sum game and call on all countries, the developed countries in particular, to assume more shared responsibilities for win-win outcomes. We should create a future of the rule of law, fairness, and justice. It is imperative to ensure effective observance and implementation of international rules, uphold democracy, equity, and justice, and build international rule of law. At the same time, the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities must continue to be adhered to. We should create a future of inclusiveness, mutual learning, and common development. Countries need to increase dialogue, exchange best practices, and achieve common development through mutual learning. At the same time, countries should be allowed to seek their own solutions that best suit their respective national conditions. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, China has been actively engaged in the global campaign on climate change. China now tops the world in terms of energy conservation and utilization of new and renewable energies. Going forward, ecological endeavors will feature prominently in China's 13th five-year plan. China will work hard to implement the vision of innovative, coordinated, green, open, and inclusive development. China will, on the basis of technological and institutional innovation, adopt new policy measures to improve industrial mix, build low-carbon energy system, develop green building and low-carbon transportation, and build a nationwide carbon emission trading market, so as to foster a new pattern of modernization featuring harmony between man and nature. In its intended nationally determined contributions, China pledges to peak CO2 emissions by around 2030 and strive to achieve it as soon as possible. And by 2030, reduce CO2 emissions per unit of GDP by 60 to 65% over the 2005 level. Raise the share of non-fossil fuels in primary energy consumption to about 20%, and increase forest stock by around 4.5 billion cubic meters over 2005. This requires strenuous efforts, but we have confidence and resolve to fulfill our commitments. The Chinese government earnestly implements its policy commitments of South-South cooperation regarding climate change. In a show of greater support, China announced the establishment of an RMB 20 billion South-South Climate Cooperation Fund in September. Next year, China will launch cooperation projects to set up 10 pilot low-carbon industrial parks and start 100 mitigation and adaptation projects in other developing countries, and provide them with 1,000 training opportunities for tackling climate change. China will continue to advance international cooperation in such areas as clean energy, disaster prevention and reduction, ecological protection, climate, smart agriculture, and low-carbon and smart cities. China will also help other developing countries build up their financing capabilities. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, tackling climate change is a shared mission for mankind. All eyes are now on Paris. Let us join hands to contribute to the establishment of an equitable and effective global mechanism on climate change, work for global sustainable development at a higher level, and bring about new international relations featuring win-win cooperation. Thank you.